I was in the physical space and looking at the digital model. It was such a moving experience to feel like, oh my God, this is actually something we help make happen.
Architecture, engineering and construction is one of the world's largest industries. Amar Hanspal has been a pioneer in AEC for 30 years. I sat down with Amar to talk to him about his new company Motif, which fuses AI, cloud and 3D software to change how buildings are built. This is the art of building. I'm Axel, I'm one of the founders and general partners at Baukunst, and it's my huge pleasure today to speak with Amar Hanspal, founder and CEO of Motif. We have a long history of knowing each other, and have been delighted to work with you. Thank you for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Axel. Thanks for having me.
So tell us a little bit about Motif to start with.
So Motif is a software company. We are building software for the building industry. I know that sounds like a alliteration, but think of the building industry as the physical structures around you, stadiums, offices, skyscrapers, schools, hospitals. And these structures are built by architects, by engineers and general contractors, and they need a digital system to create these buildings inside their machines or computers and bring out all of the documents that are necessary for constructing these buildings, drawings, 3D models, and we're building the software for that. We're relatively new. This category of software has previously been called building information modeling, and what we're trying to do is reimagine it as a cloud-native, AI-first kind of experience, because this category has not been relooked at for 25 years, maybe longer.
I remember when the term BIM was invented.
Yes, exactly.
When we were investors in Revit in the late 90s, actually. So you were co-CEO of a public company before, a very big executive job. Tell us how your life has changed.
In many, many ways. You know, I think there is the contrast between public and private. There's the contrast between having an established company and something that's just starting. I would say the first striking difference is infrastructure. When you're a public, you have a public company, you have huge amounts of people you can call on, or relationships, or, whether it's paying people in any part of the world, like all of that exists. And it's relatively straightforward. You don't wake up thinking, how am I going to do this, that, or the other? In this company, from the first day we started, and we're like, we need to find a meeting room. Like, you need to figure all of that out. Like, you don't even so that might be a trivial example, but you can multiply it. Like, okay, now I need to find I need to pay an employee in the UK. I need to invoice a customer in North Carolina and pay sales tax. Like, all of that infrastructure you have to sort of imagine, and every decision feels, I know there's a lot more you can call on, there's lots of more software that and companies you can use, but every decision is important. Like, every little brick, it's like, feels like you're building a little house and you're putting one brick at a time, and you always wonder whether you're doing the right thing. I think that's one thing. The other thing I would say, in a good way, young companies, or sort of this private world, it has this very focusing feeling. Like, you've got just one thing that you're trying to kind of accomplish, no matter how many things you're being hit at. In a large public company, you have 5 or 6 things you're trying to pull off at one time. So alignment becomes like all your days about alignment, and like getting all these teams to kind of align. In a startup, it's not about alignment, it's about survival. In a large company, it's not about survival, it's about alignment. So that kind of changes your where you push your energy. So it's that. I also think that, but now when I look back, the one great advantage of a public company or an established company is having all those customer relationships. Like, young company, you would kill to get to that stage. But on the other hand, I also think that large companies do a terrible job with customers. They just don't. Like, it becomes almost anonymized, right? When you're a large company CEO, you think of your customers as these 15,000 people who show up for your event, and everything is statistical. You don't have these. In a startup, every relationship you kind of treasure and you kind of learn from. So I think it's actually that part I've actually somewhat enjoyed trying to have fewer but more intimate relationships, if you will, with customers. I hope that sounds right, but you know. So, yeah.
So when you call up a customer, how much do they remember you? How much credit do you get for your resume and history? Or
it varies. I think some people have good memories and I can draw upon connections. There are others that I'm just building from scratch, and you know, I think it's a mixture. I would just again say that even when you have a warm connection with a customer or they're willing to introduce you to their immediate circle, you still have to earn their trust, you know. Because I think the one thing with customers you start to realize is the most precious commodity is their time. And for them to spend any of that with you, you really have to earn it. Otherwise, they'll meet you once. Oh yeah, sure, you know, whatever, nice guy, let's talk. But second, third, fourth time, they have to start believing in you because it really, time is really precious. Yeah, that's work. So yeah.
So let's come back to the company building.
Yes.
How did you assemble your team? Again, with a big company background, being not always fully transferable to a startup.
Yeah. I would say let's divide the story into two parts. One was the founding team, and the other part is then who we built around us. So in the founding team, it started with Brian and myself. And Brian and I are kind of like the yin and yang sort of. He is Brian Matthews. He's the CTO of the company. He has this deep technical knowledge. And the interesting thing about him, though, is that he's not all technology. He has a little bit of a customer intuition. He likes spending time with customers. So he can call me if he thinks like, oh, listen, you're being overly whatever. You're being overly optimistic about the customer side. And I have spent all my time facing customers, but I have just enough technical knowledge where I can call him on something and say, I think you're being too conservative about this or the other. So I think we were fortunate, and I think it's really useful to have a partner when you start this kind of endeavor, that you can bounce each other and keep each other honest. I think we realized early on that while we had a lot of knowledge about software, we didn't have deep enough knowledge about the domain. Maybe we could go 30 feet into the surface, but that we really needed to go 100 feet. And so the next two people that we tried to get on were people who had come from the industry but had made the shift to software. And that was Matt and Lira as the head of product and head of design. We picked head of design because it was very clear to me that one of the things you have to get right in this era is the user experience. In addition to the technology, you have to make product that people delight in using, right? So that was the founding team. After that, I think one belief that I've always had is form follows function, which means that you design your organization by figuring out what problems you're going to solve first. And you literally structure your organization. And what we decided in this cloud native AI first is that we need 3 skill sets. We need people who understand CAD or geometry. We need people who are cloud native, who do not understand CAD or geometry, but understand how to scale back-end and front-end systems. And we need machine learning people who are willing to look at the intersection between how that technology is moving and what can be applied here. And that's the team that we went out to find. I think the methods were different on those 3. I think CAD, we had a network. So there were a few people that we said, these people, we should call them and see if they want to do this. I think we had a hit rate of 60%, I would say, were people willing to do it. Cloud, we knew nobody. Cloud, I think we got lucky with the Twitter implosion, and we had some good people free up at that time, and somebody connected us to a couple of them, and that let us build out a bunch of the back-end team. Likewise, robotics companies were struggling around the time we got started. That gave us a little bit of a front-end team. That we just literally got through networking or introductions and stuff like that. And AI ML, that's been a slog. That is a very hard talent base to get. especially people who are interested in 3D, and 3D like the kind of 3D we want to do, not gaming 3D or world building as people call it, which is, so that was a lot of effort. And again, I think we use recruiters and people like that to get there. It's taken us a long time. And I think the one thing that you're implying in the question is that it's not just the skill set. People have to be good at working at this stage of a startup. That is a really hard intersection to find, because this is a very ambiguous time and not everybody's comfortable with it.
What mix do you have between people with startup experience versus not?
50-50?
50-50.
I would say 50-50.
All right, that's
yeah,
it. Huh.
50-50.
Yeah.
Yeah, people who've, yeah, I think we definitely have at least half the companies done startups, and most of us have kind of had like halfway success with them, kind of thing. Yeah. So.
And what about the company culture in terms of work ethic, focus on equity, conquering the world, working around the clock?
Yeah, no, we were talking about that. So it's a great question, Axel. I think first of all, I think we recognize that the thing that we're trying to do is very ambitious. Like, it's a very big project. Like, you know this, you've been in this universe. I think in my lifetime, there's been like 3 or 4 of these things that have been built, right? Over the last 30, 40 years. This isn't like building another vertical SaaS procurement application, which are amazing, good things. But there's many vertical SaaS companies. There's like 3 or 4 CAD companies. Like, it's really hard to do this because it takes a long time. So I think the first thing in the culture has to be people who are willing to go for the big, ambitious, and not looking for the quick hit. I want get this 1 year. So it's a little bit more mission oriented. People really have to buy into the big, okay. And also what that many times leads to is that they are actually also attracted to a hard technical problem that they want to go solve as part of this. Very scalable back end, some kind of infrastructure for handling like the data model for CAD that's not been established before. So you need that. And I think our culture a little bit it's more senior because of that. Because, and we've tried, like I say, ideally you want to mix the Obi-Wan Kenobis with some Luke Skywalkers. We have a few Luke Skywalkers, but our dominant culture is these. And so these people are serious. They're driven by ambitions. You don't count the number of hours they work. You kind of count the output, because you can have weeks where people will just think and then everything just arrives, kind of stuff, right? So I think it's like these days you have this 996 thing going on, like, which sounds, the spirit of it I understand, which is like commit yourself to the mission. Our team does that, but it's all remote. We are 100%. Again, we optimized for talent, not location. We thought like, okay, these 3 skill sets, we're not going to get them in one city, so let's just go where everybody is. Geometry talent can be in Cambridge, UK, or Boston, or Boulder, Colorado. You just have to go where the talent lies. And that's the other part of the culture, is that we have to be, they're independent. You have to trust them. So it's a very high trust but verify culture. And you kind of let people just give them big goals and they go for it. That's kind of the way. And the one thing that we've tried very hard to add to that is to always keep the customer front and center. Like, really begin, so I like to say, outside in rather than inside out. Like, let's not be fascinated by what we're doing. Let's just always be fascinated by the problem we're trying to solve.
I love the way you're putting this, because we love building big engineering software companies.
Yeah, good, yeah.
Let's talk a bit about the building industry. How has it changed from 5, 10, 20 years ago in terms of what customers are looking for?
I mean, what I've observed is there's a couple of big trends. One of them is the industrialization of construction. I think this is that historically everybody's been trying to improve the productivity and margin profile of the industry. It's, every AEC software company starts with a slide of how wasteful it is, right? But I think people have tried, and industrialization has definitely been one trend of like, can we change this industry to build buildings the way people build airplanes or ships, and in sections that get assembled. That's been one trend in the construction industry. In the construction industry also, more technology in the field, mainly through mobile phones, has been another thing where you can get instructions or information to the site. I think in the design of buildings, climate has been the big factor. Like a lot more of what we see now is attention to carbon footprint, energy footprint, the aesthetics of buildings, the material choices, more resilience. Like the buildings definitely have taken that. For a while, it was all these weird structures that were coming up with these twisted shapes and stuff. There's still some of that aesthetic stuff, but a lot more consideration of the climate stuff has been coming in. And I also think that just the younger generation, there's more community involvement. People want more transparency, more involvement. That's been the main evolution I've seen. It's not a revolution. I think overall the industry still struggles from the financial sort of risk allocation that they have, where just like healthcare, every layer in the system is kind of set up to allocate risk. And that continues to be their central challenge, but their methods they're really trying to change.
What about AI? How is that changing customer expectations?
A lot of people in the building industry now, of course, ChatGPT has become almost the new Google, right? You run across that a lot. A lot of the experimentation with the other things has been around visualization. So Mid-Journey, I would say you run across that quite a bit now. Nano Banana this week, where people like at the front end of the process, where they're trying to come up with ideas. Architecture is still a visual sort of, the first thing they try and conceive is like, what should this look like? So I think they've been experimenting with AI on that front end of like, what can we do to speed up that process and give us more options? And there's some promising stuff there. I think, but it's just the tip of the iceberg. I think when you think about what that industry, there's so much repetition in there. There's so much like building codes and things that they need to keep track of. I think over time, AI can really change the boring stuff in there. So I think what ends up happening is now AI is always these like nice flashy demos, like look at this, like I got this beautiful building and nice lighting. But I think the real potential for AI over time for this industry is to take, I need to create 1,000 drawings and 1,000 drawings. I need to make the font appear the right way. I need the logo to be correct. I need to make sure that I met the requirements for 16 conference rooms. Like all these things that they have to do by hand. I think that's the long-term potential. But today, most of what you go in an architecture firm, you go, oh, we did this flashy little video or rendering using AI. That's kind of where we are.
So if you take the same building today versus 10 years ago, will it go up more quickly, more cheaply today than 10 years ago? Or
I
more
don't know
efficiently?
More efficiently.
Yeah.
I think there'll be less errors in the process. I think that's one thing that I've heard over and over again. I remember a customer telling me that the first time they did use building information modeling, they'd used it on the UCSF project. They used to say they used to throw 6% of the drywall in a project into the land, like a landfill. Prior to using digital technologies, that used to be the amount of error they'd make, is that they over order, and drywall is bad for the environment. And once they did this, they eliminated that completely. So that's an example of where I think as technology there's less errors in the process. There's not no errors, but there's less errors. So there's less waste, there's less time lost. So it's improved, but it has not gone away. I think in the 10 years, I would just say that all those kinds of things about right amount of quantity, he got notified that something changed, that's gotten a lot better.
What about AI use internally, especially in terms of productivity of software development?
Yeah. Well, I think software development is definitely the one that is in the news, a lot. But it's not the only thing. I think even go to market, like you can change it dramatically using these AI tools. I think our team has been going on this like you watched adoption of technology, like the way we want our customers to adopt. We've been looking at this software development, like our tool of choice has been Cursor. Like Cursor has been the one that has been gradually adopted, and it very typically started with like, we have a team of maybe 30 engineers, like it was 2 that started it. And it's usual skepticism. Oh, it doesn't understand our code base. And there's some truth to that, right? These tools are trained on open source, what's available in the web. So not every domain is known to it, but it knows more than you would think it knows. So I think it started growing, and then every month I think we've been, whatever level we buy with Cursor, we break through it. And so I think for us, what it's helped is, I don't think we've had to hire as many people as we would have otherwise hired to do this work. I do think there's all this societal impact that, just like, I don't think, the work we would have hired junior engineers to do, basically these tools are doing for us. And they still do have limitations, and they're not things that you can just there's a little bit of, when I read about like, you just give Devin the Jira ticket and it comes back and writes I mean, a little bit of that is still a little bit of Hollywood production, but on the other hand, I think our company is about 30% more productive with these tools, is where we are, and it certainly takes care of a lot of the boring stuff that we would have to do.
We've totally seen this in other portfolio companies where people just crank out code at amazing speed, and maybe we don't need to make the extra hire because it's just, we're doing it so efficiently.
Yeah, and then go to market, same thing. I think tools like Clay, there's a lot more automation coming in. It's helped us a lot.
Even at this early stage.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's like you can construct your own sequence of how you want to talk to customers. Like, again, we have one product marketing person. She's able to do the work of probably 2, in a way. So it makes a difference.
I want to come back to you personally a little bit. What does your day look like? You have this distributed organization. You have this big executive job. How do you even allocate your time? And I should probably add that when we invested, your reputation has always been great product person, which is what resonates incredibly well with that.
I mean, I can tell you how I spend my day, but I would just say before that, it's like where I think is where my head is at. And I think fundamentally, I see myself as making sure that there's 3 or 4 things that I need to directly make sure are going right. One is it always sounds pompous, but you want to worry about the long-term strategy of the company. Like, what is it that we're really trying to do? Because it's weird. Like, if you don't pay attention to it, your company will drift naturally off course just a little bit at a time, and then one day you'll turn around and go, what the hell are we?
Sort of the North Star.
Right? The North Star, exactly. Yeah. And you communicate, and every day, I think there's a little bit of what I do is inspection that we are doing that. Much of that has to do with product, but also are we calling on the right customers, all of those kinds of things. Like, I think I spend a bunch of time, and a lot of that translates into one-on-one time with people, and then also sometimes it's the leadership meetings and things like that. So strategy tends to be one. I tend to spend a bunch of time with customers because I feel like if I don't spend some time there, I will never understand the context. You asked me about how buildings are changing. Right? Or who our competition is. Like, what are they paying attention to? Like, what are they thinking about AI? It keeps us honest is the way. So I always allocate a bunch of time for customers. And then the third thing for me is recruiting, talent. And my philosophy on talent is, I don't care whether we have an open rec right now or not. For me, it's like, I really fundamentally, I try to tell my team, I think most of the time they ignore me. I think you should always be recruiting. And some people, I will honestly tell you, even at my Autodesk career in here, I kept them in the back of my head for 2+ years until something opened up. And then when it opened up, I called them up and said, hey, we have this, would you like to come? So for me, whether we're looking for somebody right now or not, I will always be out there trying to make connections. So recruiting is the third place I spend my time. And then it's part of this job, we should never run out of capital. So I think just spending time with investors. I think not just from raising money, I think sometimes investors I also find is that they ask good questions. The good ones ask you good questions and you go, I had not thought of that. I'm glad somebody challenged me on that. And that then leads to the top of the loop. That's kind of where my head is at. My time gets allocated. A lot of it is in, I start my day 6:30 in the morning because we have East Coast operations. I'll start it there, and then I don't think it ever ends really. It's like.
So Baukunst, our venture firm, Baukunst stands for the art of building, of building companies. What does it mean to you, and also how can we help you build your company?
It's a very good question. Someday I'll have more wisdom about this than I do. I think the things I've learned is like building companies to me is like the closest metaphor I can use is like expeditions. When I grew up, you should read stories about David Livingstone finding the source of the Nile and, Shackleton going and finding I think it was the South Pole or whatever. And I think what strikes you about those stories or what the parallel is your starting point where they drop you and your ending point which you're going to try and find. The path in between is always like you're constantly adjusting, right? So I think one thing you have to be, whatever word you want to use, flexible, agile, is you have to be willing to like plan and be comfortable with planning 3 months at a time while having a North Star. Right? That is like, it is an art because this is back to your large company thing, is that we would build 1 year strategic plan. And it's like, well, we're only doing this for the whole year. And you can't do that in a startup. You gotta like, something happens, you have to adjust to it or whatever. So that sense of balancing, and I also don't agree a lot of the startups I run across is that it's just chaos. Like they'll take the opposite approach of like, well, they change their mind every 3 months and you'll never get to your North Star. So I think it's that balance of how do you think long term and then iterate your way to the answer. I think that's one. I do think you asked me about team. Team is more important. Like I think Khosla said this is the team you build is the product you build is the company you build. Oh my God, I can't tell you when you make a mistake with your team how expensive it is. It takes you off course. That's a second art of building. I think is just getting the right people. And that I think in some ways also includes investors, is that if you get one person around the table who's pushing you the wrong way, that's also very expensive. I do think the investors are a part of your team and you need to be thoughtful about that. I think that's the second thing I've learned. And then I just think, you just have to be patient. These things, these days now you hear a lot about this, hey, Lovable reached 100 million in ARR. I mean, yeah, those things happen, but every company, the unique thing about every company is its market it serves, it's its customers it serves. So you kind of have to really understand that. You can't just take, it happened here, so it should happen here. Like that patience and tenacity of really understanding what it'll take to succeed in your particular context, I think is the third thing. Sometimes you were talking about Revit. Everybody looks at Revit now. It's like it took us 7 years. Like it's an instant success, 7 years in the making. And that's what I think Figma, like same thing. Everybody talks about Figma like it's this well-written story. I think 4 years they were just wandering. They were just still trying to find their path.
Yeah, we use this saying internally, all overnight successes take 10 years.
Exactly.
Amar, tell us about some of your personal motivations. What makes you motivated about being in this industry?
There is an emotional story for me, which is that I think the time I fell in love with buildings and what we do was, there's a hospital in London called St. Bart's. It's the oldest running hospital. It's where Mozart was treated 200 years ago or 300 years ago. And the first time they took me when I was at Autodesk to go see this cancer ward for children. And they were showing me the digital model of the building or that particular room and the physical. I was in the physical space and looking at the digital model. It was such a moving experience to feel like, oh my God, this is actually something we help make happen. And it was just like, and it was a noble thing. It was just like, because otherwise you just sometimes look at software, you go, all the software is so all of us are so pretentious about what we do. Oh, we're AI first. Like, it's when you say, like, you can see it making a difference in somebody's life. I was like, okay, that's worth it. So that's kind of what motivates me.
Amar, huge privilege
Thank you.
to speak with you. Thank you for your time. Great to have you here.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.